Questlove is the director of the documentary Summer of Soul about the legendary 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival that celebrated African American music and culture and promoted Black pride and unity. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, and I'm going to start on sort of a fun trivia notes because we know you as an incredible musician and the musical director of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And last year, Jon Batiste, the band leader for The Late Night Show with Stephen Colbert, won his Oscar for composing Soul. So you might start a tradition here. Have you thought about that at all? And if you do win, are you going to help Cleto over at Kimmel's show try to get up there next year?
It isn't lost on me that I'm currently, working on 3 projects with the word soul in it. No one was more prouder than Jon. Soul was like one of the first major things I did on my own, like without my band or without someone there. So yes, if I can give notes or tips to anyone, I'd be glad to.
And so we all knew about Woodstock, and this happened the same summer, the Harlem Cultural Festival. 6 weekends of incredible performances from these music giants, and then it sits in a basement for 50 years. It's astonishing to think about. So how did it then end up in your hands? I mean, who did you link up with that said, hey, right. Questlove, what can you do with this?
So this is what I'm going to tell you. Probably the most distinct way to put it is, I think timing is the star of this film. This film starts with, Hal Tolshin and Tony Lawrence, the organizer of the Harlem Cultural Festival, and Hal Tolshin, the director, the guy that filmed everything and whatnot. They had a dream to want to heal a community who when Martin Luther King died, the whole there was such there was anger in the nation, cities were burning, and Tony Lawrence basically said, to keep this from happening year after year after year, because they don't know if people are still angry and the summer's coming and the summer was hot and it was such a nightmare. And he figured that if we could come up with something that will keep the people, keep residents happy, that they might not burn up the city. And the city agreed to it because, this is the one time, what the one lesson learned from the civil rights period was that, all your leaders might die. And, they took it a step further and figured why don't we document this and we'll get to show this to the world. And, it was a slow crawl. So in my mind, when I'm watching the footage, my question was instantly, first I made excuses. I was like, well, maybe the camera work sucks. Maybe the music is shoddy, or maybe Stevie Wonder wasn't big enough of a celebrity to gain interest. And, I kept making all these interests. And then I realized that basically, this level of what we call Black erasure is pretty much just, there's a sort of a benign level of racism that happens that we often don't speak about. But for me, it's just as dangerous as if you're firebombing a church or if you're assassinating someone. And the thing is that, Prince once said in his autobiography, if it weren't for Woodstock, the movie, that wouldn't have brought him to where he was as an artist. He sat there as an 11-year-old watching Santana perform, and that changed his life. And I started to wonder, if this came out when I was 3 or 4, my dad took me to see this. Could this have changed my life? Could this have? I got here without a Harlem Cultural Festival. But what about the millions of people that could have had this experience that, frankly, when we see Woodstock is what we think of when we think about the Summer of Love, when we think about hippies, when we think about, it was a perfectly neatly wrapped revisionist package. And, we weren't really allowed that space or that storyline. And so what I say is that 50 years later, as we're editing this film now, had this come out in 2018, 2019, this could have simply just wound up one of the more brilliant concept films that came out that no one talked about, a month after it was released. But what's happening is that, when we're editing in the summer of 2020, suddenly you don't know the difference between the footage that we're editing and what's happening on the news. And once those things started to mirror each other, then we realized like, yo, this is powerful work. And this is how this speaks to this generation. Because the whole time I'm doing this, I'm figuring like, well, this is kind of a Black Woodstock, but is this going to reach the generation I need to reach? Like, I know it's going to reach people my age and my parents, like anyone from 35 to 80 knows who Stevie Wonder is. So it's going to reach them. But what about the people it needs to reach? And, you know, once 2020 came, then suddenly life and art were imitating each other. So it became more urgent that this project see the light of day. So I will say that timing is the star of the film.
Yeah. One of the things that I loved was watching some of the performers watch their performances back. Marilyn McCoo was specifically very emotional.
Yeah.
And she talked about how badly the Fifth Dimension just wanted to be accepted when they were performing there. What was it like to sit down with some of these, you know, musical giants and get to watch them watch that footage back?
All right. So the idea to have the camera, to have the monitor in the room while they watch it was really just to spruce up, to help people conjure up their memories. Because, you know, if you're a teenager in 69, chances are you're between 70 or maybe 90 now. And, you know, a lot of times I'm in situations where I ask someone like, yo, what was that like? And the answer might be vague, like, oh, it was fun, or yeah, long ago. So I didn't want to take any chances. So I wanted to have a camera there. And the weird thing is that our very first interview, who Musa Jackson, he's the intro and he's the outro of the film. He was 5 years old at the time. And I got to be honest, I was rather dismissive. You know, I was like, oh, God, you were like, what, 5 years old at the time? Like, what do you know? Like, what memories do you have? And the thing was, we purposely held back photos and footage and memories. Like, we didn't show him anything. We just like, okay, tell us what you remember. And his memory was so on point, and none of this stuff could be Googled, like the things that he was telling us. And then we showed him the footage, and then that's when the outpouring came. And I got nervous because, again, you got to understand, I'm a first-time filmmaker. So I'm like looking like, whoa, should we stop? Like, did I do something wrong? You know, I didn't want it to be like a Barbara Walters manipulative moment where I'm cutting onions and making people cry. However, a lot of those emotional moments that you see on the film, I honestly thought were off camera. You know, thank God we still let the cameras run, but because I didn't want to insert myself in the film in any way. I didn't want my voice to be on it or nothing. And, you know, so when I'm talking to Marilyn McCoo, there's a thing called code switching. And code switching is often a thing that Black people term, you know, when we come sort of equipped in the world of professionalism, we learn two languages. We learn Ebonics to communicate with each other, and we learn job interview, which is sort of like the means of survival, where, you know, and Motown acts had to do the same thing. They had to go to charm school, and they had to present a professional front, speak proper English, and yes, how are you today, and bow and curtsy. And even when you're watching David Ruffin, the fact that he has to wear a tuxedo in the middle of August, and it's a wool tuxedo, that alone should tell you the story of where we were, where our comfort was always second to being professional and coming in the name of, we're safe. And, you know, I asked her, you know, I made a remark off what I thought was off camera. I was like, you know, in all the footage I've ever seen in the Fifth Dimension, I've never seen you guys dance before. Like, I didn't know that you guys knew how to dance. And I didn't know that Billy Davis Jr. had a gospel growl in it. And that just set off at a sort of just a wave of emotion, where she said, you know, I got to be honest with you. And she would never be this open and honest in a interview setting, because she was already trained to just say the right things and to not make people feel weird. But she was like, I got to be honest with you. Like, this is the first time we ever just felt comfortable. And it was so important to us that Black people like us, you know, because they came out the gate as such a pop group that people didn't even know they were Black until, you know, they saw them in person. And so I realized then how important this moment was, because for a lot of Black entertainers, this is the first time that they're playing in front of a mass audience that looks just like they do.
Right. Well, I could go on and on about each one of the musical artists and the people that you interview in the film. It's just absolutely fascinating. Questlove, congratulations once again on this documentary. Summer of Soul is currently streaming on Hulu, so if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. And Questlove, best of luck with this award season, and thanks again for speaking with Gold Derby today.
Thank you very much, Denton. I appreciate it.
All right.